There exists a type of creature in this world, discovered by a few, but never officially confirmed to exist. We call this type of creature Unidentified Mysterious Animal, or UMA for short. Hello everyone, welcome to the UMA video series. Vanmite is a small town in southern Iowa, located west of Des Moines. In the early 1840s, the U.S. government, through a series of treaties, forced the Sauk and Fox tribes to relocate westward, effectively taking control of the land. The area's fertile soil and abundant resources quickly attracted groups of white pioneers. Cabins and churches sprang up one after another. As time went on, more and more immigrants came here in search of opportunity. Along with them, they brought a wide variety of beliefs: animal worship, witchcraft, supernatural cults, and more. By the late 19th and early 20th century, a period that marked the dawn of modern science, to the general public, no matter how strange or unbelievable something seemed, it still felt like it could be real. And the story I'm sharing with you today was one such event that once challenged people's understanding. It involved a giant humanoid flying creature that appeared in America even earlier than the Mothman, the Vanmite monster. Also referred to as the Vanmite visitor, depending on the media outlet, it was described as a half-human, half-beast flying creature, standing around 8 to 9 feet tall, with enormous bat-like wings, glowing red eyes, and a horn-like protrusion on its head that gave off a bright light. It was said to be immune to bullets, as if it didn't belong to this world. In 2013, 3 American paranormal investigators, Chad Lewis, Noah Voss, and Kevin Lee Nelson, conducted a detailed investigation into the Vanmite monster sightings. They compiled all the information they gathered into a book titled The Vanmite Visitor. Now, using that book as the main reference and combining it with newspaper reports from the time, I will share the story with you in the order the events occurred. September 29, 1903, around 1 a.m. Local farm equipment dealer Ulysses Griffith was walking home as usual. As he passed by the Mathers and Gregg building, he suddenly saw a bright light shining from the rooftop like a lighthouse. There had never been any lighting equipment there before. Thinking it might be a thief, he cautiously approached the building. But just as he got close, the light suddenly moved across the sky to the building on the opposite side of the street. He was relieved. It clearly wasn't a thief. But at the same time, he was puzzled. What kind of glowing object could fly across the sky like that? And how did it move? He chose not to pursue it further and simply returned home. Griffith was known in town as a reliable, respected man, a member of the town council. So when he told his neighbors what he had seen, no one thought he was making it up. The next night, it happened again. September 30th, 1903, around 12:30 a.m. The town doctor, Dr. Alcott, was resting in the apartment behind his office. He was suddenly awakened by a bright light shining in through the window. No patient would try to wake him up that way. With that in mind, he grabbed the gun by his side and rushed outside, only to come face to face with the glowing source. It was a bizarre creature that defied understanding. He described it as a half-human, half-beast being with giant bat-like wings. A short, blunt horn protruded from its forehead, emitting a blinding light. He had gotten very close to the creature, close enough to smell its foul, nauseating odor. Without thinking twice, he raised his gun and fired 5 shots. But to his shock, the bullets had no effect at all. Terrified, he fled back inside, locked all the doors and windows, clutched his pistol, now with one last bullet, and waited until morning. He had no idea when or how the creature left. The atmosphere in town began to change as word of Alcott's story spread. When paired with Griffith's report the night before, it made everything feel even more terrifying. However, Vanmite's bank manager, Clarence Dunn, believed the strange events could be the work of robbers. As the regional bank official, he felt responsible for protecting the town's wealth. So that night, he decided to stay guard at the bank himself, armed with a shotgun loaded with shells. At around 1 or 2 a.m., accounts vary, The town's clock struck, and Dunn heard a strange animal-like breathing sound coming from outside the window. Curious, he looked outside when suddenly a blinding beam of light shone through the front window, almost blinding him completely. When his eyes adjusted, he saw a huge figure standing there. Panicking, he raised his gun and fired, but he didn't open the window. The bullets shattered the glass and window frame, and the light vanished. Dunn had no idea how the creature disappeared. On the night of October 1, 1903, Mr. White, a hardware store owner in Vanmite, was startled awake by a strange hissing sound. The noise seemed to be coming from the upper floor of his shop. Given the strange occurrences lately, he grabbed his gun and cautiously went upstairs. He opened a window and peered out into the drizzling night, but at first saw nothing unusual. Then, as his eyes adjusted to the darkness, he suddenly noticed a massive black figure perched on the crossbeam of a nearby telephone pole, less than 15 feet, about 4.5 meters away from him. Mr. White reacted immediately. He slowly raised his gun and aimed at the creature, then pulled the trigger without hesitation. The gunshot rang out, but the monster didn't collapse as he expected. Instead, it charged straight at him. The glowing light from the creature's forehead now shone directly toward him. The bullet had done nothing more than startle it. At that moment, a strong, nauseating stench filled the air, nearly causing White to faint. The gunshot woke up Sidney Gregg, the owner of the store across the street. He opened his door and looked outside, just in time to see the creature climbing down from the power pole. Gregg described it as an unbelievable creature. Its movement was strange and awkward. It gripped the pole like a parrot, using its large claws to slowly descend. When it reached the ground, it stood upright at a height of about 8 feet, 2.4 meters. From the center of its forehead, a bright light beamed out like a flashlight. The creature flapped its enormous, chaotic wings and hopped forward like a kangaroo. While Gregg was watching this bizarre being, the sound of a train whistle and engine came from the direction of the nearby railroad. The creature appeared startled. It suddenly crouched down, as if preparing to launch itself forward. In the next moment, it began running on all fours toward the old coal mine. That's right, on all fours. That's exactly how the original report described it. As it ran, it unfolded its wings and began gliding through the air, soon disappearing into the darkness. October 2nd. News of the monster's appearance spread throughout the town. Everyone was talking about this mysterious visitor. No one had ever seen or even heard of such a bizarre creature. Fear of the unknown spread like a virus. That night, a light rain began to fall. Mr. Pratt Jr., the manager of the local mining company, heard strange noises coming from the depths of an abandoned mine shaft. They sounded like a whispering chorus of demons and fairies. As he stepped closer, the sounds grew louder, until suddenly the creature burst out from the mine entrance, soaring into the air. But the shocking scene didn't end there. Right behind the first monster, a second, slightly smaller creature followed it out. Nearly all of the workers present witnessed the two beings. Some of the braver ones even approached the mine. Mr. Pratt described the creature's forehead as having a protrusion shaped like a foot, glowing with an unnatural light. That night, the report spread rapidly across town. All the town's lights were turned on. Men donned their wide-brimmed hats and raincoats, grabbed their weapons, and gathered near the mine, preparing to destroy the creatures if they came back. They waited all night, many growing tired and cold in the damp air. Until finally, at around 5:45 a.m., the sky began to lighten, and they saw the two dark, bat-like silhouettes slowly approaching the old mine. Suddenly, a barrage of gunfire exploded across the mining area. But the creature's only response was a thunderous, ominous roar and another wave of that terrible stench. Panic broke out, but nothing could stop the monsters. They simply walked into the depths of the old mine and vanished.
The townspeople, desperate to end it all, gathered all the explosives they could find and collapsed the mine entrance. From that day forward, the monsters were never seen again. People speculated that the creatures may have lost their way in the maze-like tunnels, or were injured by the bullets or the blast and eventually died in the dark, alone. Journalist Phillips was the first to record the entire event in writing. His article was published on October 4, 1903, in the Des Moines Daily News. Soon after, major newspapers across the country reprinted and circulated the story. That's the full account of the Van Meter monster incident. Of course, it's possible that some parts of the story were exaggerated by authors or the media. The Van Meter monster legend resurfaced in the 21st century, gaining attention again through documentaries and internet media. In recent years, there have even been new alleged sightings. But in my opinion, these reports are not reliable, because they all happened conveniently after the story became famous. It's hard to believe that such a creature could go 100 years without being seen, only to be spotted once people knew what to look for. Still, whether real or imagined, this towering bat-winged figure with a glowing horn and possibly four-legged movement, the Van Meter monster, is unlike any known creature on Earth. So what did the townspeople witness that night?
Noah Voss, one of the authors of The Van Meter Visitor, proposed that the so-called visitor might have been a species not yet documented by science, or perhaps even a descendant of an extinct creature. First, let's consider the possibility of misidentification with large birds. Even if we rule out visual illusions due to poor lighting, especially mistaking a feathered creature for one without feathers, some known bird species have been considered. For instance, the California condor is currently the largest known bird in North America. The largest recorded wingspan reaches up to 3 meters. Its body is covered in black feathers with white patches on the underside of the wings, which could potentially cause confusion in low light. Another candidate is the Andean condor from South America, recognized as the world's largest raptor. Its coloring is similar to the California condor, but it also has a fleshy wattle around the neck surrounded by white feathers, and males have a red comb on their heads. Its wingspan can reach up to 3.3 meters. Other possible birds like the great horned owl, great gray owl, or golden eagle have also been considered. However, none of them fully match the size and features described of the Van Meter monster. Noah Voss notes that visual misperception is highly likely when observing flying creatures, especially at night when poor visibility casts doubt on eyewitness testimony. Still, he believes that the Van Meter monster is not simply a known bird or bat, because during the same era, throughout North America, there were numerous reports of similar flying creatures. These include the Elizabeth Lake monster in California, late 19th century, the Snallygaster of Maryland in 1902, the Stansbury Island creature in Utah in 1903, and the Jersey Devil sightings that were common throughout the 19th century. Many of these descriptions share striking similarities with the Van Meter monster: bat-like wings, massive claws, eerie screeches, nocturnal behavior, and so on. This has led some to speculate that these creatures could represent a previously undiscovered species. The United Nations Environment Program has noted more than once that, as human society advances, many species are going extinct at a staggering rate, faster than we can even identify them. So is it possible that creatures like the Van Meter monster came from species we never got the chance to document, driven to extinction by habitat, climate shifts, or what, leaving behind? However, there are still features like bioluminescence and invulnerability to bullets that go beyond natural science and would require further investigation to explain. Another author, Kevin Nelson, presented a different view. He proposed that the Van Meter visitor might not belong to our dimension at all. He referenced the ideas of John Keel, a journalist and paranormal theorist, best known for the Mothman prophecies.
Keel introduced the concept of ultra-terrestrials, a kind of being that appears in many folklore traditions as fairies, gods, or mythical creatures, and in modern times as UFOs, Mothmen, and monsters. According to this theory, these entities aren't necessarily aliens from outer space, nor are they made of flesh and blood. They are non-physical beings that coexist with us in a different layer of time or reality, and appear in forms that reflect the beliefs of the culture and era. Nelson further referenced ideas from the holographic universe theory and the observer effect in quantum physics, which suggest that our 3D reality might be a projection of higher dimensional information. In this framework, the Van Meter's apparent resistance to bullets or its lack of a physical body could be because it was not truly material, but rather a fragment of higher dimensional information or even a projection shaped by human consciousness itself. These theories are undoubtedly controversial, but they attempt to examine the mystery by challenging the boundaries of human perception and understanding. It's a radical perspective, but thought-provoking nonetheless. Compared to these two extraordinary theories, Chad Lewis, another paranormal researcher and co-author, took a much more down-to-earth approach. He believes the entire Van Meter incident was most likely an elaborate hoax. In 1903, Van Meter did not have its own local newspaper. The first report of the monster appeared in a special edition of the Des Moines Daily News, a supplement that did not require editorial review, meaning its content couldn't be independently verified. 2 days after the article was published, the same paper printed 2 follow-up articles debunking the story, saying that the original writer, Phillips, had exaggerated the facts. However, the debunking articles were anonymous, no author was credited. Lewis speculates that the motive behind the hoax may have been something as simple as drawing attention, creating a buzz that benefited certain individuals financially. This would be similar to 19th century hoaxes like the Cardiff Giant or the Hadag.
In conclusion, the author believes that the overall credibility of the Van Meter incident is quite low. It's even highly likely, in his view, that the entire affair originated from psychological suggestion or mass panic, leading to collective misperception, what we commonly refer to as a mass hysteria phenomenon. As for me, I personally lean toward the hoax theory. But if I were to make my own judgment, I would need to return to one fundamental question. Why did all the key sightings happen so intensely within just 4 days, September 29th to October 2, 1903? Such a compressed timeline doesn't match typical patterns we see in biological migration, geological disturbances, or even widespread group hallucination. Instead, it feels more like a carefully orchestrated performance, and the audience was the entire town of Van Meter. Across all the reports, one consistent and crucial detail stands out: the creature's glowing horn on its forehead. In that era, electricity and lighting were not yet widespread. Light sources at night were extremely limited. There was no clear evolutionary advantage, no aggression toward humans, so why would a glowing creature repeatedly appear in populated areas? Many witnesses also mentioned the blinding light and a strong foul odor. This reminded me of the ghost light pranks that became popular in the late 19th century. Back then, a few pranksters would use white phosphorus, which reacts with oxygen in the air to produce a faint blue-green glow in the dark. They would smear it on gravestones or cloth strips to create spooky effects and frighten others. White phosphorus is a highly toxic, spontaneously combustible substance. Its ignition point in air is around 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and even in cooler temperatures, friction or slow oxidation could generate enough heat for it to ignite. When burning in humid or rainy environments, the combustion process slows down, conditions that matched Van Meter's warm and wet weather during those nights. Phosphorus emits a strong garlic-like smell, and when it burns, it releases white smoke and a mildly acidic, irritating odor. This could explain the strange smell people described. As for the creature's appearance and so-called invincibility, I suspect this may have involved early projection technology, such as the magic lantern, a primitive device that used convex lenses to project images onto walls or screens. Think of it as the ancestor of today's projector. These machines were widely used in the 19th century, not just in classrooms, but also for theatrical illusions and pranks.
When I consider Griffith's early report, a lighthouse-like beam of light that moved across the sky, and later accounts like Greg's mentioning a four-legged walking creature that was bulletproof, it seems quite possible someone used optical projection to simulate the image of a flying or jumping beast. Most witnesses reported being awakened by the light, yet, except for the final workers, none of them actually saw the creature leave. This fits the theory that the event was staged using light and chemistry. Admittedly, it sounds far-fetched, but a combination of white phosphorus and projection trickery might be one of the more rational explanations. As for physical evidence, that too raises doubts. Chad Lewis noted in his book that the footprint cast made by Dunn during the original sighting can no longer be located. One theory is that it was destroyed in the Great Fire of 1911, which devastated much of Van Meter. At the time, the town didn't have a museum or archival center, so if the cast existed, it may have been kept in a high-traffic location, such as a bank for people to see. The fire likely destroyed a great deal of material, including documents and potential physical evidence. And yet, curiously, while doing some research, I discovered that, in a 2018 blog post, renowned American cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman mentioned that the International Cryptozoology Museum had launched an exhibit on the Van Meter visitor. One photo in particular showed what appeared to be a footprint cast. So, did Professor Lewis later find credible evidence? It's impossible to say for sure. Of course, all of this is just my personal speculation. The glowing, bird-like figure of the Van Meter monster reminds me of the ropin from Papua New Guinea, also bioluminescent and nocturnal. We may never know exactly what was lost in the fire of 1911. Maybe the Van Meter monster did exist, a large flying species beyond our current understanding. Or perhaps the fire erased the last traces of an elaborate collective invention. Today, the collapsed old mine shaft outside Van Meter remains sealed off, but our curiosity for the unknown has never stopped. What exactly was that creature? In the end, maybe the answer no longer matters. What we should reflect on is how we tell these stories. When we reduce UMIs to nothing more than quirky labels for entertainment, are we also closing the door on understanding the complex layers of forgotten history? And so, one final thought. The unknown will always be greater than the known. That's the true allure of UMA. Thanks for watching this episode.